Hello. Oh, yes, it's working. Hello, everybody. My name is Bartłomiej Janiczak, and today, as you might have read in the description, I will give a talk about distinguishing sayings and patterns and using them for our benefit in language learning. How to learn languages by analogy, how to change your perspective in language learning so that your language learning can be more effective and faster. So first of all, how do people normally look at language learning? How do people normally describe a language that they are learning? If you ask your friends, let's say they're learning, some of them are learning French, some of them are learning Russian, some of them are learning German, some of them are learning Turkish. Almost everybody, maybe in this polyglot circle, there are some exceptions, but normally people say that languages are difficult. They describe every language is difficult. Well, yes, we can describe every single language as difficult. We can say that Russian has 6 cases, so that makes Russian difficult. We can say that German has very long words, so it's extremely difficult. We can say that English has a very complicated spelling, so it's difficult. We can say that Mandarin Chinese has so many characters that we have to learn in order to read it that it's extremely difficult for us. But what if we can change our perspective and look at things totally differently that can help us see something else and then can help us achieve our goal faster? Now I will show you a short video on YouTube which is called A Short Lesson in Empathy. It is, this is not, okay. Yeah, it is about empathy, but as this lecture is about analogies, we can draw another line in our mind and we can have another analogy and transport the message from that video in order to use it in our language learning. So, last chance.
Bro, that doesn't even make sense. It makes total sense. You just open up your mind and listen to other people's opinions.
What's going on here? What's going on?
John's being ridiculous. I'm being ridiculous. You're the one that thinks
Bro,
that.
how can you not see
Okay,
it?
boys, calm down. Okay, everybody take your seats. Matthew, John, come up here, please. John, stand over there and face that direction. Matthew, come over here and just do the opposite. Thank you. Okay, boys, turn around. John, what color is the ball?
The ball's white. Seriously? Bro, do you just like making things difficult?
Well, what color do you say the ball is?
Black. The ball is black, clearly. I don't know what you see, Robert, but the ball is white.
Without looking at the ball, I want you to both switch places. Okay, both of you, please turn around. And what color is the ball now? Okay, please have a seat.
Throughout our lives, we believe many things, and we hold dear what we think is right and true. But at times there'll be others who disagree with us. What we believe to be 100% right, they believe the opposite just as strongly. Well, how can that be? Can't they see? We can become frustrated, we might grow distant, we may even sever relationships entirely. Slow down. Breathe. Step into the other person's shoes. It'll make all the difference.
So, as you can see, we can always look from another perspective in our life. So, if we now look from another perspective on the languages that we're learning, we can say that Russian is easy because it has no articles and it has just 3 verbal tenses. German is easy because there are logic words and you can form words in a logic manner. For example, if you don't know the word kettle in English, you cannot guess its meaning, but when you hear the word Wasserkocher in German, you can guess its meaning if you know the word Wasser and the word Kochen. We can say that English is easy because there's no declension and almost no conjugation. And we can say that Mandarin Chinese is easy because once you've learned all those characters, it enables you to read all the different dialects that you couldn't have understood in speech. So, first of all, we need to stop looking for difficulties and start looking for similarities. We should stop creating obstacles that are not actually there and see the similarities that we have among all the languages in the world and use them for our benefit. So, there are a lot of patterns that you can see, a lot of analogies, a lot of lines that you can draw in your mind that can help you simplify your process in learning languages. So first of all, I will talk about lexical patterns, so some phonological changes and so on. So first of all, I'd like to apologize to all the linguists that are here and are listening to my lecture, because it is going to be a rape on linguistics right now, because I will not talk about historical processes and how the phonemes changed and historical grammar. I will just show a pattern just for the sake of making the process of learning languages better. If you're interested in the processes, then you may read more about linguistics, you may read more about some changes, about other things, but I will just show you the pattern so that the process of learning a particular language could be simplified. So first of all, let's say we know Italian and we want to learn Spanish. So we have a word green in Italian, right? Verde. And then you see a word in Spanish. Verde. Quite an easy analogy, isn't it? So if we can see that kind of an analogy, we can see any other analogy. They're just slightly more difficult. For example, if you know Russian and you want to learn Ukrainian, you know the word dom, and you see a word dim, it is the same. And then you draw an analogy how those vowels changed. So there is an O that is under stress. Right now it's one syllable word, so there's no other chance. But there's another word which means 8, this is 8, and in Ukrainian it's 8. So you can see that this O changes to I. And then you can guess a lot of meanings. When you see a new text in Ukrainian and you see that there is an I and you don't understand the meaning, maybe you should try to change it back to O in your mind, and maybe it can resemble a word in Russian right now. And then you can understand more and more. This was a simple analogy. I will keep that verde right here. It's nice. But there are a lot of different analogies that I want to show you. So, for example, let's say you know German and you want to learn English, or you know English and you want to learn German. So, for example, weiß, white. In German, you do not pronounce W as W, pronounce it as V, but in English you pronounce it W. So it's a regular phonemic change. Then there's S, and S changes to T. Where can you see it? Well, Straße, street, right? There's a T instead of S, and so on. And the same thing happens in Dutch. So it's strat, and it's probably wit, but I don't remember the spelling in Dutch, so I won't write it. So you can see a lot of those patterns. For example, right now we are Spanish and we're learning Italian. You know that, for example, if you want to conjugate the verb poder, you have to change O to U. UE, only when the syllable is accentuated, actually. So it's puedo, puedes, puede, but it's podemos, because when O is not stressed, it doesn't change to we. So podemos, podéis, and then pueden. So this is quite a regular change in Spanish. So if you see a word muerte, and you know this is a typical Spanish thing normally. When you see a word morte, you already know, or mort in French, you already know what the meaning is. And you also can guess the word, actually. So you can change it like this. When you speak Spanish and you want to speak Italian or the other way around, you can just create your own words. Even though you may be wrong sometimes, it's better to say a word than not to say it, right? It's better to have a conversation than not to have it. So then, with the time, when you're going to practice the language, you will correct those mistakes. But at the beginning, and when you're inside the process of learning a language, you may draw those analogies, draw those lines in your mind, and guess the words, and sometimes even create the words, which may be true, and by multiple occasions. Let's see another. There will be a double analogy, a double connection between languages. So, there are certain Arabic words that came to Persian. Arabic words that end with ta marbuta. So, for example, daqiqa in Arabic, which means a minute. This letter is ta marbuta. It's typical Arabic letter, which is now pronounced as a at the end, and it only appears at the end, but historically it had a t at the end. So it has. So another word is sa, which means an hour. So how were they transformed to Persian? Daqiqe, this is a final H. Normally it's an H, but here it is pronounced as E. If it's at the end, if this letter H is at the end in Persian, it represents the sound E. So that's the first possibility. If it ends with A, then it ends with E in Persian, Arabic Persian. But, as I told you, this historically was meant to be at, not only A. So the word sa is so'at in Persian. Here you have a beautiful T. So sa, so'at. So we have two possibilities. But let's focus on the first one. This is very nice, because you can draw two analogies at the same time. Let's say you're not only learning Arabic and Persian, but also Hebrew and Yiddish. Why not? So you have a word, family, which is written, let's say, the same in Yiddish and Hebrew. So in Hebrew it's pronounced mishpacha, but in Yiddish it's pronounced mishpoche. So the final a changes into e. Same thing as when this word was borrowed from Arabic to Persian. And another analogy, the doubled analogy that I told you about, this letter in Persian is h normally. This letter in Hebrew alphabet is h normally. So that's how I can remember them both. And I have a multiple analogy to base on. What is another thing? You can draw in another analogies basing on the etymology of the words. For example, when you're learning, let's say, okay, let's stay with this beautiful word, daqiqa. In Arabic, it means minute. In English, it's minute. In Greek, it's lepto. Yes. So they all come from the same thing. This word, as in most of the European languages, comes from Latin word minutus, minuta, which means small or diminished. This thing comes from ancient Greek leptos, which means small. And this thing comes from daqiq in Arabic, which means small. So a minute is something small. And then, what is a second? A second comes from Latin secundus, secunda, which means second. Yes, so like from the word two. The thing in In Greek, it's δευτερόλεπτο, and δεύτερος is second, so it's second, small. And in Arabic, it's thaniye, which means, what does it mean? Second. So you can draw that kind of analogy also, basing on the etymology of the words. So if you know the word second, as because it's not like in English, this word second means second, and second is like something lesser than a minute. But in multiple languages, it doesn't mean the same. But so when you're learning this from, for example, basing on German, Polish, and other languages, you can draw that kind of analogy when you're learning Greek, when you're learning Arabic, when you're learning Persian, because Persian took those Arabic words and also changed slightly their pronunciation, but they're still visible in the language. So that's how you can draw an analogy basing on the etymology of the words. So right now, I will give you an exercise based on Romance languages. Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese. And please, if you want to guess, so that only people who don't know the language should guess that. So the word for pain, is dolore in Spanish, dolore in Italian, dolor in Spanish, dor in Portuguese. The word for color is colore in Italian, couleur in French, color in Spanish. And we have two things missing. Does anyone want to guess, but someone who doesn't know French? Douleur. Yes. Douleur. The same phonetic changes. O to U. O, U. Dolore, douleur. Colore, couleur. And here, Portuguese for color. Cor. Yes. It's easy, isn't it? You can see a lot of things like this. Another thing, slightly more difficult. Does anybody speak Lower Sorbian here? Perfect. So please, people who speak Polish, please abstain from guessing, because it will be based on Polish and Lower Sorbian. So you have, the first word is grass. The word grass is trawa in Polish. It's chała in Lower Sorbian. And another word is mąka. This is flour, but flour not on the grass, but in the kitchen. It's mąka in Polish and muka in Lower Sorbian. So, liver in Polish, wątroba in Lower Sorbian. Not exactly. I will pronounce it once again. Trawa, chała, mąka, muka. Wuczoba. Yes, I heard wuczoba right from there. Yes. So you can see that after T, when there's an R after T, it changes to sh. W is pronounced like w, whilst in Polish it's pronounced like v. And on, nasalized sound is u in Lower Sorbian, like in most of the Slavic languages in this position, which evolved into a nasal sound in Polish. But it is an interesting thing, because wątroba in Polish means liver, but wuczoba in Lower Sorbian means something else. Does anybody know what? It means heart. So it like moved a little bit upwards, the meaning, but it's still connected to the human body. So when we stick to the liver, actually, we can see, for example, when you know Spanish, liver is hígado, and then you're learning French, and you see the word foie. Is it similar? Yes, this is the same word, actually. It just underwent a lot of changes, but a lot of similar changes, a lot of regular changes. For example, when you have a word for flour that we have here, in Spanish it's harina, in French it's farine. So like historical F in the position, in this position, evolved sometimes into silent H in Spanish. Then the consonants in the middle of the word often were dropped in French. So like G and D were dropped. And then if you learn Italian, it may help because it's fegato, so it's a bit closer. It's like a link. And then a lot of words that finish with O end with E, sound E in Spanish, which is not produced right now, so just foie. So, and this E changed into wa. Like, for example, if you know other words, to drink in Italian, bere, to drink in French, boire. Once again, a regular change. Once you've seen all that, once you've opened your mind to see those changes, because it's not difficult to see them, you may see a direct change between hígado and foie when you learn it, and you won't forget it. So that is how the lexical patterns work. There are a couple of books that may serve you if you want to go deeper into those phonetic changes. There is one book called, it has a couple of mistakes actually, but it may serve well. It's called Euro-Rom-Com, and there are also versions for Slavic and Germanic languages, but I cannot find a place where I can buy it actually, but I know that they exist somewhere in this universe. So this is a book designed, so the authors created 7 sieves. There are 7 sieves with which you can recognize different words and start to read and understand every Romance languages. At the beginning there are examples from French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and then Catalan, Sardinian, Romanian, well, Occitan, Catalan, a lot of them. And the same things with Slavic and Germanic languages. You can recognize certain patterns that are inside those languages, inside those groups of languages. But what about grammar? Those were lexical patterns, but there are also grammatical patterns that you can see. And also, you should take a different, from time to time, you should take a different approach. Not a negative approach, but a positive approach, as I was saying at the beginning. So, for example, when you're starting to learn a new language, which has a lot of cases, or at least a couple of cases, but your native language doesn't have cases, or doesn't have declension, at least, like the nouns don't change, you shouldn't look at it negatively as, oh my God, I need to start to decline those words, change them. It's quite simple, actually. You just need to imagine that in, let's say in English, you have to say in something, then a place, and in Hungarian, you put a place and then the word for in. But in Hungarian, it just comes at the end and not at the beginning. That's all. If you look from this perspective, it becomes a lot easier. Then, if you see the Slavic cases, for example, the genitive. The genitive is something that is reflected in other languages with a preposition. Like in English, you use of. In German, you may use von, but you may also use genitive. In Spanish, you may use de. But in Slavic languages, you just change the word. It's not difficult. It's the same concept. You just, it's not a new thing to learn. It's the same concept, but it's reflected in a different way in this language. If we look at this thing from that perspective, that we're not learning something new, we're learning something that we already know, but they do it differently, then it becomes easier. They do it differently, and maybe they do it better. Maybe it's easier. Maybe, for example, the verb to have. It's not necessary in a language. When we learn Russian, we think, like most of the people think, it makes no sense. This language doesn't have the verb to have. How is it even possible? maybe it's easier. You don't have to learn the conjugation of the verb to have. It's one verb less. For example, in Arabic, you have a lot more than two, but let's say two possibilities of expressing the possession, but you don't have the verb to have normally. In Russian, you do have it, okay, but you don't use it in like, I have a car or something, but in some more abstract ideas. But you may use عند or مع. عند meaning at, مع meaning with. So, and there are two different concepts. I have something, meaning I have something in my possession. Let's say I have a car. If I say عندي سيارة, it means I have a car, but probably at home in Poland. If I say معي سيارة, it means I came to Bratislava by car. I have a car, but it's right here. So those are two different concepts, and we already know what we are talking about exactly. So maybe that's a better way, and we should get rid of this word. If you think like this, then it becomes easier for you, because you changed your way of thinking. You move the ball to the other side, and you see that, well, there's another possibility of expressing that thought. So don't be afraid of the number of cases. Those are normally things that are done in your native language, most of them, but they're just expressed differently. Start to draw a line in your mind to what you already know, to the thing that you already have in your language and you understand, and then just accept that it is expressed in another way. Another thing, for example, when you already know, let's say Spanish, and you want to learn Persian and Greek. So you have, there are different modes in those languages. So in Spanish, there's, for example, subjuntivo. When you already know it, there's no problem when you want to learn Persian, and you have to deal with التزامي. So when you want to say, for example, let's see, quiero comer. Okay, this sentence is not going to be very intelligent, but it doesn't matter. Quiero comer esta comida. I want to eat this food. And then, when you speak of another person, so if the subject is the same, you just use the infinitive, but not every language uses the infinitive. In a second. If you speak about another person, if I refer to you, I want you to eat this food. Quiero que comas esta comida. And here, it's the subjunctive. The same thing happens in Persian and in Greek, for example, but it's even more widespread because the Persian and Greek don't use the infinitive in such situations. So, when you write θέλω να, not this alphabet, θέλω να φάω αυτό το φαγητό. I want that I eat. So you don't use to eat as an infinitive, but you already use this another mode. So I want that I eat this food. And the same thing happens in Persian. I won't write it down because there's no time for that. So then you say میخواهم این غذا را بخورم. So it's the same thing. At the end there's بخورم, which means that I eat something. And the same thing happens, so there's no infinitive after modal verbs. The same thing happens in Serbian, for example. When you want to say, I want to eat something, želim da, and conjugated verb. So you don't use the infinitive. There's another analogy. You don't always use the infinitive after a modal verb, like I want to do something. There may also be some phonological analogies that we don't always see. For example, I was always surprised when Spanish or Arabic native speakers couldn't pronounce the sounds like th and the in English. They do have them in their own languages, but when they speak English, they don't use them. Why is it so? There's sometimes you just think of a language as a new concept and you don't realize how many similarities they are, also phonological. So there are those sounds, you already know them, so you can use them in the language that you're learning. That's another thing that you can use. So if we look differently, we can start searching for similarities. We can start opening our mind and seeing a lot of similarities that are just at the reach of our hands and our sight. And those similarities can simplify our language learning, especially the lexical stuff, may expand our vocabulary in reading and then in using the vocabulary. If you use those analogies, you can start thinking of new words in the language that you are learning. You can start changing some phonemes so that it sounds more Italian when you're learning Italian, and then you're correcting your mistakes by speaking with a native speaker, but you're starting a conversation anyway, and you use those words. So I think that's all, and do you have any questions?
Bartek. Yes, I'm not sure if I understood well, but you told that daqiqa, the word minute, it's in Arabic, it's from Persian.
No.
No, you told that it's the opposite, yes.
No, that is the same etymology of the word minute in most of the European languages. There's the same as in modern Greek and the same as in Arabic. So the word minute comes from the word small, and the word for second comes from second from the word two.
Yeah, I know, but just because this word in Arabic and in Persian, it's exactly
yes,
the same.
It's the same. Yes, it's the same. Only the pronunciation changed a bit of spelling. Yes, daqiqa in Arabic and daqiqa in Persian from Iran. And the word second is thaniya in Arabic and saniya in Persian.
Yeah, but you told that this word in Arabic come from Persian.
No, the other way around.
Okay,
it came from Arabic to Persian.
Opposite. Yes.
Yes, the opposite. It came from Arabic to Persian. Yes.
Okay, that's.
Hi, thanks for the talk, it was really interesting. A question about, you said about Arabic speakers, they can pronounce the th sounds in English, but they, for some reason, just don't. I often do language training, English language training with Arabic speakers, so can you give me an example?
Once again, I didn't.
Yeah, an example of a word in Arabic that has the th sound.
Yes, in modern standard Arabic, ثلاثة,
Thalatha.
ثانية, it's similar.
Yeah, it sounds great. Thalatha. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you write it big?
Yeah.
What? Number 3 in Arabic. Okay. I can remember that. It's what?
Yeah. Yes, like in dialects, this sound may change, but in modern standard Arabic that they are learning, is yeah, ثلاثة. Or ثانية, the word for second. That ثانية. This is.
Thank you very much for your talk. For example, I know that you have just bought the book for Breton. Will you actually spend a few hours or weeks looking up these lexical patterns and do you think that would be a wise investment of time to be fluent in Breton?
Yes, I think Breton may help me discover new patterns to learn Welsh, Cornish, Irish and Scotic Gaelic in the future, so I think it's a good investment.
Bartek, hi, that was a very interesting talk. I was always wondered, is there a connection? Well, there is a connection. How do you explain the spread of the word for orange in different languages like portocali, portocal? Where does it come from? Is it from Greek or from Arabic, or from where is the spread? And how did it move around? Because it's very, very common in many, many languages. You find it everywhere.
So as far as I know, the word is an Arabic word, and then it's moved to Greek, like in Greek it's portocali, but it's Portugal in modern standard Arabic, but not every language has the same word. For example, Polish. We chose the word orange in French, but we added something because we have the word pomarańcza, which is also which can be also seen in some other Slavic languages. So what is that? That is the word for apple. So we have an apple orange, and that means orange, pomarańcza. So it depends. But I don't know how it was actually spread, but I think like the provenience of the word portocali, burtukal, it's like Arabic. For Turkish, well, yeah, elma, olmo, yes. Or, I don't know, like one of my favorite etymologies, it doesn't have to do with Turkish, but my Turkish is limited to 30 words, so I cannot give many examples. But do you know where the word candy comes from? So originally from Hindi word for sugar, but it came from Persian qand. So sugar. So you can draw any analogy between any languages that you want, actually, if you find it. But I don't know of many examples with Turkish, actually. Yes, a lot of words from Arabic and Persian. Actually, right now when I'm studying Arabic and Persian, I can understand a lot of written Turkish just basing on the words that I know from Arabic and Persian and the knowledge of Turkish grammar that I have. So I can understand some simple texts and stuff. So there's a lot of influence. There were a lot of influence of Arabic and Persian on Turkish, but less Turkish influence, like the other way around. Are there any more questions?
Loan words and connections?
Well, etymology dictionaries, all the etymology dictionaries actually. You can, if you don't have them, you can look it up in Wiktionary. From time to time, it does a good work. Yeah, if you mean the etymology, then etymology dictionaries normally. But if you want to look for the patterns, then our brain is the best resource that we can use. And you can base on those books like Euro-Rom-Com or something like this if you find more on that. And you can also read a lot about like historical grammar, historical phonology changes inside a particular language and inside a particular group of languages, which can help you see those patterns more deeply.
This isn't a question, and I don't know if it fully answered your questions either, but I know that the European Union was going to possibly already have published 2 books on Slavic languages and Romance languages where they do look into the patterns. I'm afraid I don't have the name of that book nor the author, but I think it's like 4 or 5 years ago I saw they were going to do it, so I assume it's already done by now.
Thank you. Anybody?
There is a book that I found called something like a Grammar of Romance, and it basically shows how most of the major modern Romance languages developed out of Latin, and compares them side by side with charts and everything, so it's really easy to see the patterns and everything. So it's called a Grammar of Romance, I believe.
There's a time for the last question, if someone is interested. No? Okay, then thank you very much for your attention.